Welcome to Westeros.org's video review for episode 9, The Watchers on the Wall. And this will be a little bit of a different format in the sense that all of the episode takes place on the wall, so it's hard for us to split it up in discussing separate scenes and so on. So we are going to start off with some background material where we're going to be discussing Maester Aemon and some of the differences on the show versus the books in his background. But then we'll really discuss the episode more as a whole and point out various highlights along the way, I think will work best probably.
Yeah. So, Maester Aemon Targaryen. Way back towards the end of the first season, he revealed to Jon that he was a Targaryen, that he was related to Daenerys and so on. But they revealed that they had changed the history a bit. They dropped the generation of Targaryens, basically. So let's first talk about Aemon in the books, because this episode kind of gives us further changes, I think, or seems to further change his background and his motivations a little bit. In the book, he is the grandson of King Daeron II, Daeron the Good. And Daeron had a number of sons. They had children. There were a lot of Targaryens. A younger son of his named Maekar. I think actually his youngest son, is the father of Aemon. And Daeron dies. Daeron's heir is killed in a tourney accident, and that's shown in The Hedge Knight, which is the first of the Duncan and Egg novellas, which will be collected together, the first three novellas that have been published, the only ones that have been published so far, in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, I believe is the title that we're using, next year. So that's something, if you've never read those and you really want your fix of A Song of Ice and Fire, wait for that, or find them individually. They were all published in various anthologies. Now, so Baelor, the heir, dies. His Daeron and then his eldest son's sons, his grandson, die as well shortly after. This leaves his second son to become king. And that guy is king, but he kind of has a problem. He's not really interested in procreation. He's not really interested in anything but his scrolls and books. So despite the prayers of his queen, also sister, I think, he never has an heir.
Yeah, prayers don't do much for
himself. So he ends up having, but he has other, there are various children and so on. So he has a brother who dies in between, and then Maekar. So basically, Maekar kind of unusually, unexpectedly ends up becoming the actual king. Maekar, of course, has two older sons who are kind of troublesome, and each in their own way. By the time Maekar dies, those two are dead as well. I think the realm probably breathes a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
But there's a problem. Who's left? Well, those sons, troublesome that they were, have two children themselves, one each.
But there's some issues with
them.
There
are issues with them as well. There's Aemon, but at this point, Aemon, as a youth, as a child, had been sent away by his grandfather Daeron to a citadel to become a maester.
Basically, he felt that there were too many Targaryens. There were too many possible heirs, and well, he felt he knew what happens when there are too many Targaryens. You get the Dance of the Dragons, or you get the Blackfire rebellions, and he thought that a good way of getting one out of the way was to have him take the vows of a maester.
So at this point, he is actually now a maester. Aemon had, by this point, years have passed. He's a young man who has become a maester. And see, the thing is, his youngest brother, Aegon, Prince Aegon, is kind of, he has his own difficulties. He has made some friends and he has made some enemies in his career.
And this, by the way, is the egg of the Dunk and Egg novellas.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about him, that's the place. But
yeah.
Those novellas sort of lay the ground to why he is not somebody that a lot of the lords want as king.
They start hinting at it. He had a lot of conflicts with the nobility of the realm, because he learned to love and want to improve a lot of the common people, and that obviously creates a conflict with nobility. So see, there were people who said, well, yeah, Aemon, we know you're a maester, but we really don't want your brother to be king. We can arrange for your vows for you to be released from your vows, and you can become king. And so that was, I think, the trial, the challenge he met in as a young man.
Yeah.
the temptation of becoming king. But in the end, he says, no, I don't want to. I want my brother to become king.
In fact, he wanted to make sure that they couldn't use him against his brother after he had said no and after, Aegon became king. So he made sure to get himself assigned to Castle Black or to the Night's Watch.
Yeah, he chooses to go to Castle Black to become a member.
To take another set of vows.
This is, he even says, Egg, after he is crowned, Egg said, stay here, stay on my council, advise me. And he said, no, your enemies are going to try to use the fact that I'm your older brother against you, and I need to take off. So Aemon kind of sacrifices himself out of duty to go up to Castle Black and take those vows. So it's a really cool story, and all the details, the fact that it ties into these stories in the past is really cool, and I hope one day we'll see one of those Duncan Egg novellas actually show us a young Aemon. It'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So, as we say, now the show has a number of changes from the books, and the one we knew from that first season was they cut out a generation. They cut out Jaehaerys, King Jaehaerys, and they cut out sort of his, we didn't know what happened to his brothers. He had brothers and who predeceased him. So we didn't know quite what happened there. What they have done is, you had Maekar, then you had Aegon, then you had Jaehaerys, and Jaehaerys is the father of Aerys, the Mad King, and thus the grandfather of Daenerys and Viserys. Now, by cutting him out, we didn't quite know, we assumed that we still had the older brothers of Aemon and so on. Maekar's sons.
Yeah.
That seems to have changed, because what he says here really makes it seem kind of obvious. He says, I had all these opportunities. If I had given the word, I could have gotten married, basically. Yeah. I was heir to the throne.
Well, actually, I think the do you know what I could have been if I'd only said the word is about being king, I guess.
Yes, he had, so many women were brought to him because he was clearly, I think, heir.
Yeah, he was.
By the time he is even notionally heir to Maekar, at least where he is the eldest surviving son of Maekar, he's already a maester in the books. This seems to not be the case on the show. They seem, I think, my take on it is he wanted to be a maester. He was a scholar. He didn't want to rule. But out of a sense, he kind of felt like he had to. His father was insisting, you're my heir, you're not going anywhere. When Maekar dies, I think what we're having here is Aemon says, you know what, I don't want to be king. Let my brother be king. I want to go and become a maester. That seems to be what they've done.
Yeah, it changes his personality a bit, because in the books he is a very dutiful man, in the sense that he is the offer or the possibility of becoming king is when he's already a maester and he has the vows. Obviously, he doesn't want to take it from his brother either, but it's a lot of it is duty, I think, that he feels that, you don't break vows like that.
He's tested. He said he was tested.
Yeah, so it wasn't unthinkable for him.
Well, it's worth noting, in the show, I'm fairly certain that he actually only says, I was tested once in my old age. They cut out the fact that he's being tested by the temptation of becoming king. It seems like he never wanted
to break his vow. Whereas on the show, then, he basically decides to avoid the duty that, royalty is a duty as well as privilege, and he, as the heir, he had a duty to become king, and he decided to follow his heart instead. Yeah. So it does change him a bit, but that is a minor point. But certainly we don't know if this could have any other ramifications that changed history.
It might. Certainly it has implications, as I said, I think, for the adapting Duncan Egg.
Yeah, if that were to
ever happen, it would change.
They're missing some key people. They have to shuffle them around in the family
make
tree.
That work. So, all right, and now let's go on to the battle for the wall. Really interesting. Very exciting, very spectacular episode. Neil Marshall directing again after his fantastic turn on Blackwater, and again he delivers.
Much happier with this than last week.
We were last week.
Yes, they have to condense things. This is several chapters in the books.
Yeah,
and it's so that you don't get there's a nice sort of drawn out feel to it in the books, which they can't really capture. But I think they did a very good job of adapting the material anyway.
Yeah, because in the book, obviously you have the attack on Castle Black by the Magnar Fen. Tormund's not involved in that in the books, of course, but he is here. Is is stage 1. That happens, and after they manage to just to defeat that, then they have to deal with defending the wall on the other side, the northern side. So that is a change, but I think the compression certainly amps the sort of excitement, because you have this weird situation of you have people on the wall defending it, and you have people down below defending the castle, and you have this sort of, it was really interesting how they used the movements, like, you know, Thorn decides I can't defend here, I have to go and join the, you know, lead the defense down here, and then you have the whole situation of Slint and Gren, and
if only we didn't get to hear Brother Slint. Sounds like he's a monk.
It is a bit odd.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever.
They've been using it more with brothers all the time, so they make it very monastic. It's not quite, but on the other hand, it is sort of a militant order.
True.
It's just not really religious in that way. I guess there are lay orders that do the same thing. So, that was a bit of a nitpick. I mean, it's small.
Yeah, well,
it's weird. I don't think it really makes much of a change.
No, it just sounded odd. It was a bit of,
so.
It just sounded a little odd to me because it wasn't something I was expecting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think hadn't they been using it though before? Like, didn't they call awful Yarwick Brother Yarwick?
It's possible, but it just stood out for me more.
It does stand out there. So, how to discuss the episode? I mean, we could go kind of chronologically, but it feels like it's going to be just really like that's cool. Well, that's one of the details that I thought was interesting is Samwell, and I'm not surprised that David and Dan hit on this.
Oh yeah,
because people
apparently Samwell has been reading the forum.
Yeah, people on the forum have kind of said, hey,
this will have to be one case where Samwell says, not I read it in a book, I read it on a forum.
Yeah, well, basically it's very much rules lawyering.
Yeah.
I'll take no wife, father no children. That's what the vow says, and he's technically right. It doesn't say you can't sleep with a woman.
Yeah, that's the letter of the vow, but you know,
the spirit, and George has said so. Everyone understands that those words mean that you will not have any relations, because
well, at least John points it out.
Yeah, John points it out. That's what it is. So it's good that John points it out. It's a nice showing him kind of wrestling like he wants to, but like the vows, and so he's kind of thought, hey, you know, just kind of kicking it around.
But let's do it like this, perhaps. Your favorite bit.
My absolute favorite bit. Let me think. That's an excellent question. Well, you probably have a favorite bit, so let me hear what your favorite part is while I ponder.
I think it was really impressive seeing the giants and the mammoths, that they actually were able to do that, and it looks so epic, and you know that they were able to get to that point where they actually could have giants and mammoths. I think that was really impressive and really important for this episode.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean...
had to be a visual spectacle, and it was.
Yeah, I'll say talking to people involved in the production years ago, I mean, after the first season maybe, and like, you know, how are you going to manage stuff like the Battle on the Wall, and you're going to have the mammoths and the giants, right? And, you know, like, we don't know we can afford it. I mean, you know, and the production's become more confident. It's become more adroit, better at using its resources, and visual effects have gotten. I mean, you can see between the first season. I mean, just compare the dragons, the Birth of the Dragons. There's nothing against those people. It's literally every year the technology is getting better. It's just getting better, and now it's at the point where stuff that used to cost. I mean, basically the prices remain the same, but what you get for them are better. So they've gotten to a point where they can do it. And now the thing is, looking at that mammoth, it must be some sort of actually a practical effect. I don't think it's a CGI thing entirely. I think some of the bits.
You know, I'm terrible at
I think some of it is they just had guys develop a gigantic suit because
it could almost fool me that it's a real mammoth. And
it was really well done. It's really impressive, and the giants are fantastic. I mean, I love seeing. I have to assume. I mean, it's Mag the Mighty, Mag Martundaweg, the king of the giants. We have no names, but I mean that's in the book. That's who it is. Mag the Mighty tears apart. You know, they break through that outer gate.
It's a little awkward here that he lifts it up and then actually puts it back down.
Well, he's a giant. He's not a rocket scientist. I mean, what can he do anyways? He can't do anything with it.
Well, if the idea was to let people in, it failed.
There was no one around. I assume he understands that there's some inner gate. And he says, well, I'm going to get through and break through that, and then we'll get it. We'll deal with the rest later.
I suppose
Anyway, it's cool. It's fantastic.
What did you think about that scene? with Gren.
Fantastic.
I think, you know, the whole having them recite the
vows,
vows. That's one of those moments that you kind
could
of...
have been. I mean, in the book, we don't see what happens.
No.
It's a mystery, and in the end, they come down and they find Donald Noy, the one-armed blacksmith, who is basically the most senior man at Castle Black.
It's actually a little bit of a theme with the books. I just realized when you said they don't see it. There's a lot of things, obviously, because it's all from Jon's perspective. A lot of this in the books is actually about Jon not seeing what happens right then and there, but then going and looking at what the battle has brought.
Yeah.
Finding afterwards who has died, who's still alive. I would say that the feel of the chapter compared to the show is very different in that sense, because you're with Jon in the moment in what he experiences, but then a lot of it is aftermath and waits in between. Now, this is one of those cases where obviously the transfer from one medium to another made that fairly difficult. We couldn't have an episode that just focused on Jon's point of view and having him seeing things afterwards. I think it would have been oddly paced for a TV.
I mean, it is very different, and partly it's the layout of Castle Black has changed. The way the attack is done. I mean, Castle Black is walled here. It's not walled in the books. It's bigger. It's more sprawling, and it's this night battle where, or this late battle where basically they'll see wildlings flitting from place to place, and you're shooting at them, and then there's suddenly, you know, you're on top of a tower, and you hear them climbing up the steps trying to get at you in the tower's roof. It's got a very different feel in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, George doesn't try to give you an overview of the battle.
It's very much you are there. You're in the middle. You don't have a full sense of what's going on.
And then Jon sort of looks around and afterwards, and then of course because it stretches over several chapters, you have breaks in between, longer breaks in between where people are waiting what's going to happen next. So the feel is different, but I think that they made anyway good choices. You know, I think it has a stronger emotional content, the chapters. But this is as in more in well, it's a different emotion anyway. It's much sadder.
It's sad, and it's less hectic in a way. There's a little more. I mean, in the book, of course, and I don't say this just. I'm just trying to explain the difference. People are gonna say, "Oh, you call in the book." In the book, it's like I'm just saying. But
we're doing this to discuss how it was adapted and what choices they made.
In the book, it's slower because like you don't have these two. You have one fight, and then you have the other fight, right? And the other fight is for Jon is entirely up on the wall. So it's him separated by 700 feet from the attackers. He doesn't personally swing a sword. It's commanding the men. You know Donald Noy tells him, the wall is yours, Jon Snow.
Yeah, did miss not hearing those words.
It would have been nice someone to have said. I would have had Gren say it after.
Yeah, I mean other people we get
even joke like, I guess the wall's yours now, Jon Snow.
Yeah, that would have been a nice, because I mean we have other people being told that you have the wall, Brother Slint, and the wall is yours. I think Jon tells Ed. Yeah. So it's just one of those iconic lines. That...
but so he's there on top, and it's basically it's this thing where he's watching these little people like ants fighting, and it's such a strange fight, and so there's a lot of room for contemplation and a lot of considerations. That it's not like this hectic, like my life is in immediate danger. So it gives. But
everyone is, or he's thinking very much about
what happens if we fail.
How is this going to end? And it's like has a lot of time to think about that, and of course you can't have him think. So
I think it works very well on the show, but it makes it very much an action-packed moment. Yeah. And the character beats are fewer for Jon, I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess my favorite part, and I was gonna say the Giants. I mean, if I had to pick like a favorite like wow moment, it's actually the tracking shot. Did you notice the long tracking shot where the camera is sort of in the center of the courtyard and it goes around, and it basically gives you a 360 of the whole battle. That's after Jon gives Samwell the key and tells him, I need him more than I need you, as in speaking of Ghost.
Yeah.
And Jon leads the men to attack and goes in it, and the camera does this big sweeping pan around, and it ends, of course, where after Jon has, and the others have sort of fought back the wildlings a bit and made it clear for Sam to run off to the cage, or the door the room where Goose has been locked up. I thought that was tremendous.
Yeah, no,
Tremendous direction. It's not the 6-minute single take tracking shot of True Detective. No,
but that's not a battle. On the other hand,
it's not a battle. It's I mean, it's a crime scene.
there's a lot more people involved here.
Yeah, it's an amazing scene in True Detective. It's really stunning.
Yeah.
But this is really cool.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic. I think you can tell that it's composited in some fashion, but it's not just a single long take.
Okay.
I think they did do some compositing. So I think when you see this in other things, what you do is you film them several times and you piece it together digitally. So I think that's what they did. But I think it was, hey, it's fantastic that they could do that. So hats off to Neil Marshall and the director of photography, whoever that was. I don't quite recall. Fantastic. Favorite sort of character moment or favorite... well, I mean, at the end you have to come to Ygritte's death. You know, I'll be honest, and yes, fine, this will say something about... I did entertain the possibility that they would decide to keep her alive. I can't... No, they wouldn't really, would they? But, like, there are changes made.
It was a worry.
It was a worry because the other thing is the books have... There's another female wildling who hadn't been introduced in the Storm of Swords, who is captured at the end, who plays a role in the events of the 5th book. And I thought, well...
They could let her take it.
They could have Ygritte stay around and take that role. I mean, right? They wouldn't, would they? So I admit, I had a little lingering concern. So I'm glad that was just silly paranoia, but they did do the right thing.
Yeah. I would have liked it to be closer to the book in this instance, but obviously because of the other changes, that wasn't really possible. Because, as I said, there's a lot of Jon experiencing the aftermath in the books, and in the books, what happens is that he doesn't see Ygritte die. He sees her.
He doesn't see her wounding, the mortal wound. He doesn't see.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. He said, because I think he catches sight of her when the wildlings.
At one point,
he sees some red hair, but you know there are a lot of wildlings, or quite a few wildlings with red hair. So, but he thinks he's caught sight of her, and afterwards he goes looking among the fallen wildlings because, you know, they beat back this attack quite decisively. Most of the wildlings died.
Dead. Yeah.
So he goes looking, and he finds her on the battlefield with an arrow in her, and she's dying. And there's this moment where he thinks that could it be one of my arrows, because he was firing on those wildlings. And no, the fletching is different. But it plays out, you know, her last words are indeed, you know nothing, Jon Snow. You know, they had to be. Yeah,
they had to be. I'm glad they did that as well.
And it's a beautiful moment. It is a little bit more Hollywood, the fact that they have her shot right in front of him.
Right in front of him, and you have Ollie's nod.
I mean, we had guessed that they were going to use...
No, that was very clear, but they were going to do the poetic justice. You know, she used her bow to murder his father. Yeah. He's going to use his bow. So as soon as... I mean, I knew it when we first see him. And once we see Sam telling him to get a weapon, and the first thing he falls on is a bow. That's what's going to happen.
It's a difference from the books in that, again, Jon doesn't know who killed her. In fact, he has a conversation later on where he's asked if it was him, and it was one of my brothers, and he thinks to himself that he hopes he never finds out.
He wouldn't know how
he doesn't want to know who did the deed. Obviously here, it's a kid. He's not gonna...
No, but it's not like he was
planning to kill, but he just didn't want to know.
He didn't want that particular thing to be between him and whoever it is. Basically.
Yeah.
So it was nice. It was
for the most part, it's very well handled.
It's very well handled. It's got the right emotional beat at the end with they trot out the slow motion as he's cradling her body. I'm fine with that. For a moment, the battle's gone out of his head, and it's just his grief. And then he's right back to it, basically. So,
which fits very well with the books, because as I said, this happens in the first chapter that is covering the fighting, and then he has lots more to do. He doesn't have time to grieve.
Yeah. So on the whole, that's probably my favorite moments.
Yeah.
My least favorite, I'll just get out of it. There's a couple over-the-top bits, silly bits. I'm just like, why? I mean, come on. I mean, it's very over-the-top Hollywood action stuff, like the giant arrows are somehow so powerful that when they hit somebody, they propel him dozens of feet into the air and then down the wall. Or
first, the idea that they could construct a bow strong enough, I'm not...
you had ballista, which the Romans did, that shoot out big spears. I mean, that's what they used to kill the other giants. So technically, yes, that bow didn't quite look like it was big enough, but that aside, it's just...
But yeah,
the force that it's supposed to carry to be able to... It's sort of like when somebody gets shot in films, you know, and they go flying back at half a dozen, and then people say, well, no, in reality, you don't go back anything, really. So that was just silly. And the scythe, the giant, huge, enormous, metallic
I mean,
pendulum.
for one thing, it doesn't seem... I mean, realistically, the wall wouldn't invest in this because, yes, there are wildlings that try to climb over the wall to go raiding. That happens. But I don't actually think... I don't quite remember. I read the chapter recently, but I don't quite remember if there's any climbing...
The concern is that...
The attempt that they will scale during a fight.
Yeah,
I mean, they do it under cover of, you know, away from the towers. They try to do sneak over, basically.
There's no chance that they can climb and with people defending it. They
So the idea that they need this big scythe on hand for, just in case we have hundreds of wildlings climbing up the wall at Castle Black.
Yeah, it's a bit silly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the scythe is ancient. Okay, listen. And it was used to stop the ice spiders.
Don't talk about ice spiders.
Ice spiders. It's an anti-ice spider defense.
It's an anti-ice spider defense.
It should have been bronze, though, then, instead of iron.
Yeah.
It should have been a great bronze pendulum.
Yeah.
That's it. It's for ice spiders.
Oh, I guess we know scythe matters. Sorry, had to steal that from Buffy.
All right. Let's go back to our usual programming.
It was a bad joke then. It was a bad joke now, but... You know.
Great visual effects. I mean, the filming. You know, since the last episode turned a lot on the aesthetics of cinematography. Chaotic battle. You do get faster cuts because you have these very quick cuts where you have to glimpse so many things happening. But
we get a really nice, impressive fight, I think, between John and the Magnar.
John and the Magnar was good and solid, and also I have to say, I thought, and I'm going to go back to him as well, just to discuss more generally, Alistair Thorne and Tormund. I thought that was an excellent scene, and that was really well edited, and it is a cramped, confined space. They're just, but he uses all of it, and he leaves it so you can see when Tormund is driving Alistair back. You see the whole thing.
There was no problem following what was happening and getting a good sense of each fight.
And going back to Thorne, I was really impressed with Owen Teal. I spoke to him in the first season, the filming there.
I mean, it's a very changed character, but he's done a very good job.
I think I like the bit where he kind of says, "We'll say it. Go ahead. You were right. We should have seen the tunnel." And then he explains, you know, when you're a leader, you can't second guess yourself. You can't constantly say, well, I don't know. Maybe I should do this or that.
I mean, at that point, it's almost as if he's starting to think of John as a potential leader.
Maybe so.
And giving him that advice to some...
I know, I can see that. I don't know. I think he's just explaining himself. Maybe. I mean, because it says that once they're done, you do what you're supposed to do. We'll survive this, and you can go back to hating me, and I can go back to hating you. So he's not.
But they're portraying him as a good commander.
He as someone, he made some mistakes. He has allowed his hatred of John to blind him a bit.
Yeah, but for the most part, he's a solid
But he is excellent here, and he's a guy that you hate him, but when he goes down there and he tells them, I promise you, this castle will still stand at the end of the day when dawn breaks. We'll defend it, and he leads that defense. Fantastic.
He can lead. Basically, men will follow him, and that's crucial.
Yeah, so that was crucial. He looks like
they sell it.
They sell it. So I really appreciate that. The performance was really good. I don't know, but this is Sam and Gilly. Let's touch on them. Fine with her. I mean, the funny thing is, of course, in the books, Samuel has this notion that, if you're here, you're going to get raped immediately, and it's
on the show.
3/4 on the show. In the books, it's not a concern whatsoever. I'm saying is, in the books, when they tell Molestown, hey, you know, there are wildlings coming, 3/4 of a town empties itself and runs off to hide.
Yeah.
And many of them take shelter in Castle Black, including a number of prostitutes and young women and boys and so and men as well.
I mean, it becomes a bit of an issue after the fighting. I believe John notes. I mean, there's wildling women and also...
He's concerned later about the effect it might have on discipline for this.
Yeah.
So it is later an issue, but at the time, at that particular moment, he's not concerned.
Yeah.
So, Sam and Gilly. So I thought, you know, it's interesting where he kind of says, well, I got to hold to my vows, and he hides her and tries to tell her, and he kisses her, and to reassure her and sort of to kind of go that far into a relationship. I think in the end, he is going to kind of guiltily break his vows, but saying like, you know, he loves her and she loves him.
Precisely where they're going with it,
no, this is a question. I where we go next season with it, it'll be interesting, or even this is a difficult one to review because I don't there's no clear, like, the battle, everything about it, you know, the little silly bits aside was fantastic. The fighting, the death of the Magnar, as you said, was a great fight. I would have loved, and this is the budget thing here, despite all of it, it would have been amazing, wouldn't it, if Ghost had, I mean, because Ghost isn't there in the books at all at this point. It's just John. But since they did have him, it would have been awesome if we had seen Ghost more. Yeah. I would have loved John to be doing something, fighting more, and Ghost is watching his back, and that would have been really awesome. But that's just geeking out. That was just the image of that would have been cool. But I like that he said we need him. Yeah. I would have just liked more evidence of him. We basically seen him take down one guy. For all we know, he decided to.
I like the fact that he decided to go and snack on a thin, because I guess. Yeah. Okay, so you eat people, so do I. Yeah. No, it's
Pip dies. Pip is
Pip and Gren.
Pip and Gren die. Not. They're still alive in the books. That's an interesting. I don't mind as such. It does. There's a storyline that kind of ties with them, or rather, but maybe they can do it just with Sam. I don't know. Where basically John starts distancing himself from his friends, and that causes tension and upset. That obviously, but he could be doing it with Sam, so we'll see where they go with that.
Yeah, that could be what they're going with Sam, actually.
But yeah, Pip, it was good showing him all the time. He always seemed the meekest, the one most frightened, the one said like, I've barely been trained, and I'm supposed to do it. You know, we're outnumbered 1,000 to 1, and I've never, you know, swung a sword that had an edge on it. What am I doing here? I wish I wasn't here, and that makes perfect sense, perfectly reasonable. And yet with Sam's help, he kind of does what he can. He finally kills someone with that crossbow of his, and then he dies suddenly, and Sigrid shoots him. I thought it was well done. It shows it's one of those small stories. I mean, he's the hero of his own story, and that's how it ends. And Gren, just as Donald Noy did, he fought and he died and he stopped the giant. And I would have loved if they had been able to arrange it in the same way.
Yeah. That's true.
In that, Donald Noy is the blacksmith in Castle Black, and he is the most senior man at the point where John is there, where they're defending the wall. And he tells Jon Snow, you know, the wall's yours, and he goes and personally holds it to the inner gate with a few men, and all those men die. I mean, Mag the Mighty the giants are enormously powerful, and he starts ripping through the gate. And at the end, when they find them, they're clinging to each other, because basically with one arm, Mag grabbed him up in his huge arms and started crushing him, wrapped around like this. And Donald Noy, with his dying breath, managed to free his arm and shove his sword, you know, into Mag's neck or chest and kill him, and they die like that. So he's holding him like a child, and that would have been really cool. I imagine that would be very difficult to manage, given the fact that they don't have an
actual giant.
I mean, they have an actual giant because it's all prosthetics. I think that's probably Ian White, the actor who did the other in the first.
On stilts, then, or something. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know quite how they shot it. I imagine they did some stilting. I mean, those massive boots and such could probably hide something. And I think, I don't know, I thought that when I saw the makeup or a bit of it once, I'm not sure, but his face is actually in the head.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, to be honest. But it could, anyways, that would have been cool. But I love the moment, John saying they did their duty, they held the vows, and they held the gate. Really fantastic. I always love sort of heroic stuff like that. That's
the
always...
end, then, if we get to that, is also different because in the books...
Oh, it's very different.
It's very different because in the books, John actually ends up being arrested by the rest of the Watch.
Well, what happens is, remember, Slint and Thorn aren't here at all. That's why, and then after the battle, they happen to arrive. He's woken up in the morning, and they've arrived from Eastwatch or something. And Thorn has thrown his lot in with Slint, and they arrest him.
Yeah.
And they accuse him of, breaking his vows with the wildlings and so on, being a turncloak. And then next we see John, he's hanging up in a cage up on the wall and freezing and so on. They left him there. And then they bring him down, and Slint says, and Thorn say, if you want to prove your loyalty and so on, here's your choice. We can execute you as an oathbreaker, or you can go out and kill Mance Rayder. Don't know how, but claim that you want to talk, parlay, and kill him. And John is sent out to do that. So here
they arrive at the same point. John is going out to kill Mance Rayder, or attempt to kill Mance Rayder.
But it's his own plan.
His own plan.
A desperate bitch. I do love the dialogue, the discussion where it is a bad plan. You're absolutely right, but what's your plan?
Yeah. So it's something that John could do. It's not out of his character. He could come up with that idea. On the other hand, in the books, it makes it putting that burden on him by basically forcing him to do it. It creates a different emotional response to it, I think.
It does,
but it's obviously with the simplification of the storyline, that's really the only choice they had at this time, because basically they're saying there's no one left to command. Slint has run off and hid. He broke down completely. Like, there are no giants.
Well, wait, No, he's broken down. Yes, he's broken down because, obviously Sam finds him cowering in the corner there. I was a little concerned with Gilly, but he was going to try and attack Gilly, like, oh, you're a wildling, get out. And she ends up killing him or something, and so he finds, but no, he's still alive, which
she could probably hit him with a baby and kill him or something.
Yeah, well, they had a frozen
leg of
lamb or could beat him to death. But in any case, and Thorn. Thorn's a question.
Seems to be very badly injured, possibly dead. Sam says he has fallen.
Is he dead? I don't know. The wound looked. It was maybe in the belly or the hip. I'm not quite sure. It looked like it was bleeding a lot, but he must have. Maybe he bled out. I don't know. We'll see if next episode hopefully addresses it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it works pretty well, and it's a spectacle.
Yeah.
And it's very adroitly handled. It's well directed as a spectacle. The writing was like 95% of the time what you wanted.
Yeah.
There's little beats that it misses, but it thoughtfully and cleverly kind of fixes certain story or sort of blends certain things. So you have Gren, not Donald, dying, and you have Sam seeing Pip's death, and
because it had to be someone that we had invested some time with. It couldn't just be a faceless.
And Gren did that. It was great to have Gren sort of doing. Before that, he has that heroic moment where he's the one who kind of sees like it's not working with Slint, and he goes off and he comes back and says, "Hey, Thorn's calling for you."
Yeah.
So he kind of saves the day there.
Yeah. When Slint has decided that there are no giants, despite looking on them.
No, he has a complete. Is it a little unfair to Janoson's character? I don't think the real Slint would have frozen like that.
I was thinking about that.
They did make it. They've made him much more of a coward and craven than he is. He's not a nice guy. He's not like he's a macho hero guy.
He's not a particularly competent commander either, I think.
He's perfectly capable. He's perfectly capable.
Okay.
He commanded the City Watch for a couple of decades or whatever.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He may be corrupt, venal, untrustworthy,
an unpleasant fellow.
Unpleasant. He may be all those things, but he could have handled that. So they've changed that, but it gives that nice moment to finally let John command the wall.
Yeah.
So, I think they really did a tremendous job, and hats off to him. And I wish we could have liked the previous episode more.
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to like it still for all the problems that I've had with the show. I'm watching it because we are so invested in everything around it, and partly I'm watching it because I want to experience those moments that feel just right. Like we had them in episode 7.
Yeah.
The conversation between Oberyn and Tyrion, that was one of those where, this is capturing the feelings that I had when I read this.
Yeah.
This feels like Westeros. This feels like Song of Ice and Fire, and so I want to have more of those moments.
I think this
And I
episode
think
delivered
this episode
quite a lot
has
of
them
it.
because you see,
Yeah, and even with changes, there are changes that still hold that spirit in almost all the cases.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a great episode. Is it as good as Blackwater? I don't think so personally for me. But on the other hand, it has a stronger emotional tie to me because of Ygritte's death.
Yeah.
And the sacrifices of Gren and so on. You don't get really noble sacrifices in Blackwater.
Yeah.
I
mean, I wasn't, Blackwater isn't a huge favorite of mine in the sense that I'm not really one for the big battles. Even when reading, I do like the wall battle because of its pacing in the books. I wasn't a huge fan of Blackwater as a battle in the books. It's just not my favorite part of the book.
What Blackwater had, which I think it managed to capture more of the contemplative aspects because it had Sansa in the big ballroom. So
this is true.
So it was able to capture those quieter moments, which by changing
with
this battle
people
up,
waiting for what is going to happen to us,
which is more present in the book for this battle. Basically, in the book, as I said, Jon's on top of the wall, and it's basically it has a very different feel, and it's a little more contemplative and such. So
I would probably rate it just about around the same.
About the same.
Yeah,
about the same. They're different. They're different beasts.
Yeah.
Unified by great writing, great, really clever adaptation, and tremendous direction.
Yeah.
Production value. It's really one of the best things the show's ever done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's that episode, and.
Just
so strange. Just one more to go.
Yeah.
The children. What is that about? That looks like it's going to be. It has the potential for being. I mean, it has the potential to being a really tremendous finale. Because
there's a lot of things that are supposed to happen.
There's a lot of things supposed to happen, and Storm of Swords. We have certain characters who aren't done with the Storm of Swords story, right? And Storm of Swords. That the first 3 books are kind of a unit on their own.
It's an arc.
There's an arc, there's a closure, and you're launching a lot of characters onto a new journey.
It basically completes the War of the Five Kings and the, sort of some of the aftermath of that.
Yeah, so it sets a lot of characters in Storm of Swords beginning new journeys. So this final could be...
It should open up a new chapter.
A brand new chapter, a brand new movement in the whole story. So it'll be interesting to see if they capture that, and then we'll be waiting until next year to, I guess, obviously after that,
news will start coming out.
Casting news, location news, all these things, and obviously after that episode we'll also just do a general season 4 overview of how each storyline worked out for us and so on, and see where it stands. And if the next episode is good. Despite the misstep for us of episode 8, I think it could. It's not as going to be as, I don't think, I have a feeling, I'm predicting it, I'm not going to feel that it's going to be better than the first season, but story wise.
No.
But it could. The second season had a lot of problems, and I think it might come up better in the second season. I'm not sure about the third season. Jamie and Brienne were so awesome there, but we'll see. Until then, we'll wait until then and see what happens.